Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Pretty Joker here. Welcome back to another ranking video. Today is a very exciting one because today I'm going to be ranking every single Christopher Nolan movie ever. Oh yeah, baby. Christopher Nolan, one of the most divisive filmmakers I see. I see a lot of people saying that his films are too serious and that they're just pretty garbage. And then there's people like me who absolutely love all of his movies. That's kind of an overstatement. I don't love all of his movies. However, I would consider him one of my favorite filmmakers out there. So with the release of Oppenheimer, which I know you saw the full review for Barbie and Oppenheimer, which if you haven't seen that, I recommend go checking it out. I probably won't be talking a lot about Oppenheimer as much as I did in that video. So this is my personal opinion on his movies. Don't get too heated about it. And also, disclaimer, any and all film footage that I use in this video is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Brady Joker makes no claim of ownership and simply just wants to use the footage for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under fair use. So, there. I just want to talk about these movies. So let's get rolling on with the list with number... Alright, so coming in at number 12, we actually have my least favorite Nolan. We have Dunkirk. Alright, I know some people really enjoyed this movie, but I'm sorry, I just didn't. This movie bored me out of my mind. This is one of the few Nolan movies that I genuinely just didn't enjoy watching. I just thought it was so slow. And the reason why this movie is really slow is because this is one of the few Nolan movies that I really feel like he doesn't care about the characters at all. The characters in this movie are so boring. There's barely any dialogue. There's no story structure. It's just kind of following three separate kind of plots. One over sea, one on land, and one in the air, and that's really it. This movie didn't really feel like a movie. It felt like a compilation of war clips. Also, Harry Styles in it, which is like, what? Why? Why did Nolan get Harry Styles for this? I don't know. It's weird. This movie just didn't do a lot for me, and I wasn't a fan. This movie personally just didn't do a lot for me, and I wasn't really a fan of the story. However, the visuals and the cinematography was absolutely gorgeous. The shots in this thing are absolutely breathtaking in so many moments, and that's really the one thing that I'm going to give to this movie to make it at least mid. So yeah, Nolan's worst movie is mid, in my opinion. So yeah, we can only go up from here, right? Alright, up at number 11, we have Christopher Nolan's first feature film, Following. This is a very interesting movie to where you can definitely see Nolan is already at an early age starting to play with his typical ideas that he usually uses, and especially when we get later in Memento. This is a film that is kind of structured very interesting, especially how early on in his career this was. When you have Memento immediately after, you can definitely see the influence that Memento has on this film. And I'll talk about Memento much later. But yeah, Following is really interesting. However, the characters feel really bland. They're kind of bare-boned in this one, especially our main character. Cobb is a very interesting character. I do like Cobb. But literally, if you look on Letterboxd, they're literally listed as like the following man and then the blonde girl. So I mean, these characters aren't really interesting. The movie's an hour and 10 minutes, so the pacing isn't like for an hour and 10 minutes, it feels like an hour and 10 minutes. So you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. I thought this was just a good movie, a very solid first attempt at something kind of innovative already like this. It kind of reminded me of Pi by Darren Aronofsky, where Pi is like this black and white Darren Aronofsky's first film, followed by one of his best, A Requiem for a Dream, and you can definitely see the influence that Requiem for a Dream had on Pi, or that Pi had on whatever. Same thing with this and Memento. Alright, coming in at number 10, we have Tenet. This is Nolan's most confusing movie, and it's not even close. Everything about this movie is confusing. I don't really feel like rewatching it or watching YouTube videos about it because I just don't care all that much. Now, the first 2 hours of this thing were actually really good. The action is really well done. It looks great. The acting's good. Daddy Pattinson's in it, so there's always that. But yeah, the last like 30 minutes of this thing really, really took me out of it. It's just so convoluted for no reason. Karsten said it best in his ranking video, where you can have a lot of fun with this movie if you turn off your brain. Unfortunately, I think that's what Nolan didn't want you to do while watching this movie. So yeah, if you want to have a fun time, watch the first 2 hours and then kind of hope that you understand the last 30 minutes. And if you don't, I guess you can settle in for the YouTube video, but that's just not for me. So yeah, I enjoyed the movie. It's fine. It's very visually immersive. The score is nothing to be all excited about. Travis Scott's that one song, The Plan. But yeah, it's a good movie. It's fun. It's fun. Alright, coming in at number 9, we have Insomnia. This is, like I was talking about in Wes Anderson with Rushmore, this is kind of the black sheep of Nolan's catalog, in my opinion. This is kind of the one film that doesn't really stand out compared to the rest of his movies. I still think it's a really, really good film. I actually originally gave it a 4.5 when I watched it, but after thinking about it, I lowered it because I was like, that's kind of ridiculous. But this movie, it's just your average crime thriller, and that's it. It's really well done, the performances are excellent, and the story is interesting. It's just your average crime thriller. That's it. Looks nice, the score is good, the tension is great in this movie, especially when you have scenes with Al Pacino and Robin Williams, which I think they both do an incredible job, especially Robin Williams. I love his performance in this thing. It's super sinister, it's disturbing, but you also have the sense of, do I trust him or do I not trust him? You're not really sure yet. You don't know how evil he is until you reach the climax, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's where we're at. I really enjoy this movie and how it deals with its themes, and I don't know. I think it's good. It's just not a movie that I think Nolan should have directed. Nolan's whole thing in his thing is playing with time, playing with reality, playing with, you know, what it means to be a human. And while I think the last one there does kind of intertwine with this movie, I feel like those first two are really important with Nolan. And this movie just lacks all of that completely. I still really like this movie. It's just, it's the black sheep of the Nolans, in my opinion. And that's okay. It's okay. Alright, coming in at number 8, we have The Dark Knight Rises, the first one in the trilogy to make this list, and I think it's the worst. Now, I absolutely love this movie, and especially on rewatch, I think it went up quite a bit in my scoring. I really like this movie. It's just, I do have a lot of complaints about it. I've been debating a lot about whether I'm going to spoil the movies or not, but I'm not going to. There's just many things in this movie that I really don't like. I think it's kind of universally known at the point that Batman isn't in it for like a solid hour and a half. And I'm like, okay, I wanted Batman. I got like the first like hour with him, and then bang, he's in prison for an hour and a half, and he's not Batman, which is really frustrating for me. Also, there's no Michael Caine in this movie, barely. Jim Gordon's barely in it because he gets shot right at the beginning. It's just like, okay, you're losing out on some of the prime characters that I loved so much about The Dark Knight, and it's just like, ugh, why are you doing this to me, Nolan? However, Bane is easily the second best villain in this entire trilogy. And obviously I'm saying second best, but yeah, Bane is awesome. Even though he is mixed horribly in this movie, he's awesome. He builds good tension, he's suspenseful, he's very menacing. I couldn't think of a word for a second, went blank. And also the action scenes in this movie are flipping incredible. They're just really well choreographed, and every single punch thrown, I'm like, yeah, get him. I also really like Anne Hathaway as Catwoman. I think she does great. It's just a really interesting and really fun movie. But unfortunately, there's a twist at the end that I really hate. I think it totally dwindles the character of Bane. Like, totally kills his character. And then, I can't say that, it's going to spoil it. But there's something else that I really don't like, but I'm not going to spoil the movie. So, yeah, Dark Knight Rises, it has a lot of pros. And the ending in this movie, like the last 5 minutes, are perfect. Perfect conclusion of the trilogy. I love it. But there's a lot of cons in there too that keep it back from making me want to put it above like Batman Begins. Alright, up at number 7, we have Batman Begins. Now I have a lot less to say about this one than I do the other two in the trilogy, but this one is just a good old classic fun comic book movie. Not much else to say. I actually think Christian Bale's performance in this one might be my favorite of the trilogy. I wouldn't say the character is at his peak as he is in something like The Dark Knight, but I think I actually really like his voice in this one compared to the others. I know that's a hot take, but I don't know, I really dug the voice in this one. I do think the villains in this one are a bit weak compared to the other two in the trilogy, but they're still good villains. I love Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow, even though he's barely in them. But he's one of the only characters that is actually in all 3 movies, which is kind of crazy to me. And at the end of the day, this is just a fun, dark, gritty, entertaining origin story, and I really enjoy it. It's just a fun watch. I really like this one. I'm not a huge fan of Katie Holmes as Rachel, but, you know, Maggie Gyllenhaal kills it in The Dark Knight, which I'll talk about much later. So yeah, Batman Begins. It's fun. Alright, number 6. Bear with me. This is going to be a hot take. Number 6, I got Inception. I know Inception is a lot of people's favorites of Nolan's. I've seen it a lot. Inception is quite a bit of people's favorites out of Nolan's, and I can certainly see why. The concept of this film alone is ingenious. The ideas of having dreams within dreams is absolutely insane, and the way Nolan is able to do this without making it overly complicated like he does in Tenet is insane. Because, you know, I actually wasn't that confused while watching this movie. A lot of people are like, oh, Inception's like too confusing for me. I actually followed it pretty well. I mean, obviously I was still confused about like a couple small nitpicks that I had about, you know, plot holes and stuff, but for most of the part, I was following the movie and I enjoyed it. I think everyone gives a great performance here. Leo, you got Tom Hardy in there, Cillian Murphy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Love all of them. So great stuff in this movie. Unfortunately, the character work surrounding these great actors is just not enough to where this movie sticks with me. The character work, the writing in this movie is way more focused on this insane concept, and it really lacks the character arcs and the development, in my opinion. Of course, Leo has his arc, but everyone else just kind of is there to help out and doesn't really have any depth at all. And for me, I love character pieces. I love character studies. Characters in movies is why I watch them, because I find characters so fascinating, and this movie lacked that for me. Now, don't get me wrong. I think this is a fantastic movie. I love it. It's also one of the ones that I consider fantastic, the one that I would want to go back to the least. So I love Inception. It just has a couple faults, and I just prefer the other movies above it a lot more. Alright, coming in at number 5, we have The Prestige. Oh my god, this movie is amazing. Now, this is how you do character stuff to having an insanely interesting concept. Borden and Angie are some of my favorite characters in any Nolan movie, and their dynamic and their rivalry is so fun to watch unfold because it's essentially just these two guys pranking each other with magic. And it's so fun, especially me. I love magic. I love it. And so just watching this battle unfold is so much fun. The ending is amazing. The plot twists are unexpected. You'll love to see it. I would say complaints. I do feel like this is one of the only Nolan films where I don't really get immersed in visually. When you think about something like Inception or even Tenet, I feel like those movies are a lot better at immersing me with its visuals, and this movie isn't really immersive in that way, in my opinion. I still think that the camera work is great, it's just not really visually immersive like some of his other films are. I still absolutely love it. The story is amazing. Every performance in here is incredible, especially Christian Bale, bro. Christian Bale nails this performance. I like Hugh Jackman, but on rewatch, Christian Bale, one of my favorites of his, definitely. Definitely top 3. So yeah, if you haven't seen The Prestige, what are you doing? Go watch it. Alright, number 4, this and number 3. I knew my top 2. I kind of knew the rest of the list, but these two picks, number 4 and number 3, they're insanely close for me. And number 4, I'm gonna go with Oppenheimer. Dude, Oppenheimer was incredible. And honestly, like, you know, I'm not gonna talk about it that much because I already made my review for Oppenheimer. But dude, Oppenheimer is amazing. I genuinely don't see how people can think that this is a boring movie. Like, sure, the first maybe 45 minutes can be a bit slow, but I was never really bored while watching. Just this type of movie isn't my thing. So I wasn't really interested in what it was saying. I wasn't bored. I found Nolan's immersion to be great in this movie with his characters, his dialogue, his framing, the lighting. Everything was immersing me into the movie. But I wasn't really interested in what was actually happening until we hit like the hour mark, and then I was fully invested and I loved it. So yeah, if you haven't go see this, go see this in theaters. This is a movie that needs to be watched on the big screen. Go see it instead of Barbie, because man, Barbie was a disappointment. Alright, number 3, we got Memento. I love Memento. Guy Pearce. Crazy how Nolan has never gotten Guy Pearce to do another film, because Guy Pearce gives an incredible performance in this movie. And this is one of the most interesting movies that I've ever seen. I don't think I'm ever going to see a movie like this ever again, at least done this well. If you don't know anything about this movie, basically the black and white sequences go in a chronological order, while the colored sequences are played back through time until they meet up at the very end to form a cohesive narrative. And this is a movie that is made to be rewatched, as films should be, and that's something I love about this movie. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to rewatch it before the filming of this video, so maybe on rewatch I prefer Oppenheimer, but as of now, I think I prefer Memento. These characters are just so much fun to watch, and the concept is really cool, but Nolan's also able to have fun with this movie while also keeping it like very visually immersive too. I really like the camera work that this movie has. The writing is insane. The moment that you realize that something isn't as it's always been, because like I said, the movie plays back in time, so you think you know something and you're like, okay, that's what we know, and then you realize something much later than it makes your mind all messed up. You're like, oh my god, how is this happening? It's such a fun movie to watch. It's crazy. The reveals are so good. I love Memento. Alright, number 2. We have Interstellar. On rewatch, this thing went up for me quite a bit. I recently rewatched this with my whole family, and they all give it 5 stars, and I originally gave this a 4.5, and then I was like, you know what, that was pretty dang amazing. I'm going to give this a 5-star, because it is a 5-star. Now, don't get me wrong, I still have a lot of issues with it, particularly stuff about the ending that I'm not going to get into, because I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't seen this masterpiece. But it's not even like it really takes away from my viewing experience. It's just like when I sit back and I'm like, how did that happen? What was that the movie was trying to do? That's when I'm like, okay. But that's really only after the movie. When I'm watching it, this thing is so much fun. Every performance, Matthew McConaughey, he's amazing. You know that stuff already. The visuals, you already know all that stuff. The visuals in this movie are amazing. The story is amazing. And I think this is Nolan's most emotional film when it comes to having heart and soul. I know some people disagree with that, but man, this movie is probably Nolan's most emotional in my opinion. There's so many moments where I'm like, oh my god, this is the saddest thing I've seen in my life. Like that scene where Matthew McConaughey is watching his kids, or watching Casey Affleck get older and older. And it's just like, oh my god, it's so sad. It's so sad, dude. But something that I really noticed on my second viewing of this movie is the score. Easily one of my favorite scores in any movie ever. Every single time that theme, you know, the ones that like the docking scene when they have to dock, the cornfield scene, every time that like score comes in, it actually gives me chills. It's incredible. This movie is so immersive. It has heart. The characters are incredibly written. This is just a fantastic film with a couple nitpicks that I have that keep it back from being my favorite Nolan. And at my number 1 spot, call me basic, call it a stereotypical, call it cliche, I don't care. Number 1 is The Dark Knight, and I don't care what anyone says. The Dark Knight is a perfect film, and it's not hard to see why. This is just... It's hard to sum up in words what The Dark Knight is, because I think so many people have talked about it that there isn't much I can say that hasn't already been said. Every performance in this thing, Heath Ledger, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Aaron Eckhart, Maggie Gyllenhaal, they're all fantastic in this movie. I really prefer Maggie Gyllenhaal as Rachel, really. Because when I was watching Katie Holmes, I was like, I feel like she's acting like she's a badass, while in The Dark Knight, I really feel like she's a badass. And the Joker, bro. Do I have to say anything more about the Joker? Like, it's one of the best performances of all time. It's the most iconic performance of all time, maybe. Every single time the Joker is on screen, you are in constant, like, on the edge of your seat. And it's just perfect. The Joker is scary, he's menacing, he's evil, and you love watching him act on screen. It's perfect. It's an absolute it's an absolute travesty that we lost Heath Ledger at such a young age. May he rest in peace. But, man, his performance will be remembered for a very, very long time. I just think something that separates this from all the others is every single character is at their peak in this movie. I think Batman's at his peak in this movie, Gordon's at his peak in this movie, Alfred's at his peak in this movie. Every character is at their most entertaining, in my opinion. You also have one of the best character arcs in any of Nolan's movies, probably the best. We have Two-Face / Harvey Dent, which sets up the third movie and the whole rest of the trilogy. Like, it's crazy how big this character and his climax and his arc really is, and that's why I love it so much. Everything about this movie is perfect. The editing, the production value, it's all there. It's all perfect. You know how good The Dark Knight is. You know how good it is. Watching you know how good it is. And that's my Nolan ranked. See, I hope I didn't piss off too many people, but it's a good list. I feel like there's not as many hot takes on here as there was in like my Wes Anderson, but yeah, thank you guys for watching this. I love Nolan. I wanted to release Oppenheimer 2. Oppenheimer 2 coming out in a month. And yeah, hope you guys have a great rest of your day, evening, or night, whenever you're watching this. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!